Hello, everybody. Scott Golden here with the World Class Championship Wrestling Review Series, and we are going to journey through a good bit of 1985 here. We are on July 20th, 1985. Not a bad show per se, although kind of a filler show. Just for everybody's knowledge, I am up to the beginning of October in my viewing. Hopefully, those will go up tonight, if not tomorrow. My goal is to have 1985 finished by the end of the weekend, and the series finished within probably the next 2 weeks by mid-October at the latest. So that's my goal, and then we're gonna move on. I don't know where we're going quite yet, but we'll figure it out. Anyway, uh, July 20th is a reasonable show. I mean, there's some good stuff, but there's also a lot of, I wouldn't necessarily say lazy stuff, but stuff that just is there kind of as a filler. Normally they have the world class summer show series or something from the like a Cotton Bowl type thing, which they end up doing later in the year here, but they didn't do it in summer this time. Scott Casey is in your opening match, a guy who, as we go forward, still managed by Sunshine, by the way. As we go forward, Scott Casey takes on more of a prominent role over the next few months, both in tag team and singles action, which is a bit surprising. Casey kind of, I mean, he's okay, but at the same time, he does have a lot of bland-ish mindset, and we kind of see him move forward through an enhancement match here. The a match with, I believe, Mike Reed here, but I mean, not a guy who really accomplishes a lot during the next couple of months. Very basic moves, and you kind of go into kind of a highlight situation. It's more a guy to fill out a card, a guy to kind of make progress because he's local, which is one thing that the Von Erichs do. When they do have a guy in Texas, I wouldn't say they get more credibility, but a hometown hero type mentality, because it works with the Von Erichs, does work with a guy like Scott Casey. And I don't know that Scott Casey, if he were from Boise, Idaho, would have nearly the same effects as being a local Texas guy. And it's there. Yeah, Mike Bond is the opponent, and so not Mike Reed. I knew there was a Mike there. Sunshine still managing here, and it does become clear over the next little while why Sunshine is kept on, but we don't really get that till the end of summer, beginning of fall. The reason behind it. Casey with leg grapevines, small takedowns and the like. I mean, Casey is certainly a guy who doesn't waste a lot of energy, comes up with, arm bars, wrist locks, and the like. Really a very basic meat and potatoes kind of wrestler, but does get a reaction from the crowd that is beyond the norm for a relative newcomer. So I think there's something to building him into a bigger star being as a direct result of his willingness to kind of get over with the audience by doing basic wrestling. Reed is, he's a guy who, the enhancement talent here is a guy who or Bond rather, is a guy who is there to fill out the card, is there specifically with no long-term purpose. He can have a passable match, but he's very basic looking, and sometimes, and I think it's lost in today's wrestling, there are, and especially when you read like an AEW thread or they're not pushing this guy here or there, it's like you can't push everybody, and I think that's a lost reality on a lot of fans today, is that not everyone can be pushed, because if you push everybody, how do you get anybody over? If everybody's over, then nobody's over, and I think there's value to that mindset, and there's value to approaching it that way. Casey obviously does get the win here. Post-match, we do see a Gary Hart interview. Gary talks about the winning of the six-man tag team championships for his men, and you know, that's the gang, Lewin and Killer Brooks. I mean, there's a press conference set up. Gary Hart has always been, when he does well, he does really well. They go to the airfield with Kevin Von Erich. Kevin Von Erich complains because Brian Diaz was blocked from competing. They don't really get into the details why. I'm wondering if there's another syndicated show where they get into the details why Diaz was blocked from competing, perhaps injury, but they don't really. They kind of hint around that the medical commission didn't allow him to compete, but the one thing that's very hard, or not very hard, but harder than it should be to follow in world class is kind of the championship lineages, which are not always talked about completely, and also kind of the angles that happen at house shows aren't always put over on TV as well as they could or should be. Mark Lewin, who is here, actually Lewin is one of the guys who is built around for the next little while. I don't know his history in the area. I know he wasn't here in '82 when we started, so probably earlier times. He takes on, and I mean Mark Lewin's a big guy in Florida, known for his Florida run, known for kind of being more intense. Obviously the devil gimmick with Kevin Sullivan is where a lot of people would know him from. But I mean that's there, and he's not a guy that you want to worry about. Gary Hart with him is a dangerous pairing if you're a fan of the Von Erichs. Mike Reed is in this match, which is actually probably where my mind went to with his name. Lewin willing to bite, scratch, claw, punch, and also use a very lethal sleeper. Gary Hart actually does wake the men up from the sleeper because at this point in history, and here's an interesting thought, what today would be considered kind of a rear naked choke and the sleeper were treated in very similar fashion to each other, which is interesting. Texas Deathmatch style contest with Kerry Von Erich and the one-man gang from a house show somewhere because the ring is lit differently, is up next. And I guess they do Texas almost like a last man standing style match. Match is super basic here. And Gang, for all the praise I've given Gang in terms of how he's pushed, one-man Gang cannot do an abundance of things in the ring. Big surprise. He's a big guy. Kerry always does come back very strongly with, hard shots and the like. We do see Kerry get a slam off. We also see the Gang shove the referee, which, I mean, today wouldn't mean anything, right? But back then, there is a good shot to that. They do the knockdown style in like a Texas deathmatch format. First man back to his feet wins. There is a use of a chain, but also a knockout discus punch by Kerry. Kerry back to his feet, Gang not to his feet, and Kerry gets a victory there. Gary Hart not happy with this, obviously. But he doesn't really go off on the Gang. Gee, I wonder why. I don't think going off on the Gang would be a good idea. We return. Chris Adams, still your, I believe, Texas champion, facing off again with Kevin. At this point, though, one thing I have to say is that World Class does give you a lot of the same matches. They give you quality matches, but it's a lot of the same stuff. And if you're watching week by week and say you weren't a Von Erich fan or you weren't a Chris Adams fan or whatever, you might get bored. You might get a little frustrated. Roll-ups by Kevin there and a lot of just, forward going. Actually, somewhere along the way, Adams gets busted open. More trickle-ish blood, not really heavy blood, but you see him get busted open. He's not happy with that. Again, kind of the attempted use of the victory roll. Kevin certainly would like to win a championship, but still, I mean, over probably at least a year later, they're brawling around on the outside in this feud. As we go further into the match, Kevin busts Chris up even more. Chris actually laying across the wooden ringside table not broken. What a thought there. And I think table being broken, a la Randy Savage, Ricky Morton, or a la very early Sabu when it was still a novelty and you saw it maybe monthly or whatever because that's what ECW ran. That's fine. Now, seeing a table broken is no big deal, and kids try to emulate it at home in their backyard organizations, which is frustrating. Uh, Adams tries to keep uh, Kevin down, but can't quite get the job done. Um, Adams bails to the outside and is willing to cheat to get whatever victory he can. The referee, uh, is trying to get things going back in the direction of having some semblance of order. You even see a little bit of aggression from Kevin that you don't normally see, including he's kind of trying to fishhook the mouth of Adams here, and that's a little intense for a Von Erich. Misses a big splash, and one of the things that I have always noticed is that when the Von Erichs miss moves, or even when they hit some moves, a la Kerry with some punches or splashes by Kevin, they're overextended a lot of the time. Sometimes overblown, oversold, I guess would be a way to call it. Anyway, a tie up into the ropes by Adams, and Adams comes back with some sort of weaponry. I think a ringside microphone cord or something. It was hard to tell what they really had, but Kevin certainly trying to choke him out with that power cord, and obviously that, or actually I think it was the ringside rope tie. Remember, they didn't have barricades back then. All they had was a strand of rope, as if that was going to keep people back from, charging ringside. That causes the referee to be less than enthralled with that, and Kevin certainly celebrating what he perceives to be a victory off of that, but that is not the case. And the referee admonishes him for trying to choke the life out of his adversary. But, Adams gets the victory because he's under the skin of Kevin to that degree. The security leads him back, and we are done with July 20th, 1985. We'll be back with more right after this.